What if the most powerful stories that shape our world are not truths, but veils? What if the greatest story ever told, the one that has forged empires, inspired saints, and defined the very soul of Western civilization, was not what it seemed? What if the figure at its very center, a being who walked on water, healed the sick, and spoke of a kingdom beyond the stars, never truly touched the earth he walked upon? Welcome, soul traveler, to one of the most profound and challenging mysteries of spiritual history. Today, we journey into the heart of a belief so radical, so mind-bending, that it was declared a heresy and driven into the shadows for nearly 2 millennia. We delve into the forbidden story of Docetism. Before we go any further, take a breath and notice how your body reacts to these questions. If something in you is already stirring, you are exactly where you need to be. If topics like forbidden history, hidden gospels, and exiled heresies speak to you, consider subscribing now so you do not lose this thread. This channel is an ongoing archive of the ideas the Empire tried to erase, and every new soul traveler who joins gives us permission to go even deeper. Imagine for a moment that reality is a dream, and matter is the fabric of that dream. Now, imagine a being of pure light, of infinite consciousness, entering this dream. Would it clothe itself in the heavy, perishable garments of the dream world, subject to its laws of pain, decay, and death? Or would it appear in a form made of light itself, a phantom, a divine projection sent to awaken the dreamers? This is the central riddle of Docetism, an ancient teaching that proposes that Jesus Christ was not a being of flesh and blood, but a spiritual entity who only seemed to be human. This is not just a historical curiosity. It is a key that unlocks a completely different understanding of divinity, suffering, and the nature of love itself. It challenges the very bedrock of faith for billions, yet offers a vision of spirit so unbound, so free. It is breathtaking in its scope. Prepare yourself, for to understand Docetism is to question the very foundation of what we perceive as real. Together, we will pull back the veil and gaze upon a vision of divine love so immense it could not be contained by mortal flesh. As we move deeper, I want to invite you into this mystery as a participant, not just a spectator. Ask yourself, as you listen, which part of this story challenges you the most, and which part feels strangely familiar, like something you have always known but never had words for. Hold that question gently in your mind, and when it finally lands, write it down and share it in the comments at the end of the video. Your insight may be the exact key that another soul traveler has been silently searching for. To truly grasp the origins of Docetism, we must first immerse ourselves in the world from which it sprang, the vibrant, mystical, and intellectually daring world of Gnosticism. In the first centuries after Christ, there was not one single Christianity, but a cosmos of interpretations, a garden of wildly divergent beliefs, each wrestling with the profound implications of his message. The Gnostics were the mystics, the seekers of gnosis, a direct, intuitive, and experiential knowledge of the divine. They were not interested in blind faith or pistis. They sought to know, to experience, to awaken. For the Gnostics, the material world was not a divine creation to be celebrated. It was a flawed, shadowy realm, a cosmic error, a prison for the sparks of divine light that had become trapped within humanity. They spun elaborate myths to explain this predicament, tales of a perfect, transcendent reality called the pleroma, the plenitude of light. This was the realm of the true God, a being beyond all names and forms, and his emanations, the divine aeons. In this mythology, one of the aeons, often named Sophia or wisdom, in a moment of passion and ignorance, fell from the pleroma and inadvertently gave birth to a lesser, flawed creator, the Demiurge. This Demiurge, sometimes called Yaldabaoth, was arrogant and blind. Unaware of the pleroma above him, he looked upon his flawed creation, the material cosmos, and declared, "I am God, and there is no other God but me." For the Gnostics, this was the God of the Old Testament, a being of judgment, jealousy, and law, who had crafted the physical universe as a cage and human bodies as prisons to ensnare the divine sparks of light that were Sophia's legacy. Matter, with its endless cycle of birth, decay, suffering, and death, was seen as the very antithesis to the purity and permanence of the spirit. And here lies the great Gnostic dilemma, the question that ignited the Docetic fire. If the material world is a cage built by an ignorant jailer, why would a perfect emissary from the realm of light, a savior like Christ, how could the infinite be contained within the finite? How could pure spirit become subject to the base needs of a biological machine, to hunger, thirst, exhaustion, and the ultimate indignity of a bloody, physical death? For the Docetic Gnostics, the answer was simple, logical, and yet staggering. He wasn't. He couldn't be. The very word Docetism comes from the Greek dokein, which means to seem or to appear. The core of their belief was that Christ's physical body was an illusion, a phantasm skillfully projected into our reality. He was a divine teacher in a spectral disguise, an apparition of light walking among men. This was not a deception in a malicious sense, but a necessary accommodation. The human mind, itself trapped in the grand illusion of matter, could only perceive and interact with a form that it recognized. Christ, in this view, put on a human mask so that he could speak to the mass. This idea echoes through the forbidden texts, the scriptures that were burned and buried in the sands of Egypt. In the Gnostic apocalypse of Peter, the narrator sees Jesus on the cross and simultaneously standing beside it, luminous and laughing at the ignorance of those who believe they are torturing his true self. He explains to Peter, "He whom you see on the tree, glad and laughing, this is the living Jesus. But this one, into whose hands and feet they drive the nails, is his fleshly part, which is the substitute." In another text, the Acts of John, the apostle describes the baffling nature of Christ's body, saying, "Sometimes when I would lay hold on him, I met with a material and solid body." And this is the mind-bending heart of Docetism, the separation of the true, spiritual Christ from the apparent physical form. Let us now explore the three profound implications of this spectral Messiah. First, the phantom body and the nature of reality. The Docetic Christ did not have a body in the way we understand it. It was a vessel of appearance. He did not eat because he needed sustenance, but to maintain the illusion for his disciples. He did not leave footprints in the sand because of physical weight, but as part of the divine teaching a performance of physicality. His form was more akin to a hologram, a projection of consciousness so powerful and so real that it could interact with the material world without being of the material world. This concept is a direct and radical challenge to our own perception of reality. What is real? If our senses can be presented with a form that seems perfectly solid, that can speak and teach, that can be touched, yet is not made of matter, then what does that say about the world we inhabit? Docetism, in this sense, is a powerful precursor to Eastern philosophies of Maya and modern simulation theory. It suggests that the boundary between appearance and reality is far more porous than we believe. It echoes Plato's allegory of the cave. Humanity is chained, watching shadows on a wall, believing them to be real. The Docetic Christ is a figure who has entered the cave from the world of light outside, but to communicate with the prisoners, he must cast his own, divinely controlled shadow upon the wall. The Gnostics saw this as the ultimate lesson. By presenting an illusory body, Christ was teaching us that the entire material world is, in its own way, an illusion. He was demonstrating that our true essence, like his, is not our physical form, but the spirit within, the divine spark. He was showing us that we, too, are spiritual beings having a material experience, not material beings searching for a spiritual one. The phantom body was not a trick. It was the teaching itself. It was a mirror held up to creation, reflecting its transient, conditional, and dreamlike nature. Second, the illusory suffering and the rejection of blood sacrifice. Here we arrive at the most controversial, the most heretical, and the most challenging aspect of Docetism: the crucifixion. If Christ's body was not real flesh, then he could not have truly suffered. He did not feel the nails piercing tissue and bone. He did not feel the thorns on his brow or the spear in his side. The agony on the cross, the cries of abandonment, were part of the grand illusion, a final, dramatic performance for a world that understood redemption only through the primitive language of pain and sacrifice. For Orthodox Christianity, which eventually triumphed, the physical suffering and death of Jesus is the absolute cornerstone of salvation. His blood was the price paid for the sins of humanity, a final and perfect sacrifice to appease a just and wrathful God. But for the Gnostics, this idea was horrifying, even blasphemous. Why would a loving, perfect God, the transcendent source of all, demand a blood sacrifice? This was a primitive ritual, a barbaric transaction worthy of the ignorant Demiurge, not the ineffable father of the Pleroma. To them, the God of the Old Testament, with his jealousy, his tribalism, his wrath, and his constant demands for burnt offerings and sacrifice, was the Demiurge himself. The true God was a being of pure love and light, who sought not to punish, but to liberate, not to demand payment, but to awaken. The crucifixion, in the Docetic view, was therefore a profoundly symbolic act, not a physical one. It was a final, masterful lesson to show the ultimate powerlessness of the material world over the spirit. The forces of the Demiurge, the archons, the rulers, the soldiers, the laws of physics, could capture and destroy the appearance of the divine, the phantom body. They could nail a ghost to a tree, but they could not touch the true, spiritual Christ. The spirit is eternal, unassailable, and cannot die. The laughter of the spiritual Christ, as described in the Apocalypse of Peter, is not cruel or mocking. It is the laughter of liberation, the joyful recognition that the greatest power of the material world, the power of death, is an illusion. He was laughing at the futility of the Demiurge's agents. He was demonstrating to humanity, in the most dramatic way possible, that what they fear most, pain, degradation, and death, has no hold over their true selves. The lesson was not "I suffer for you," but rather, "You need not suffer, for you are not your body. You are spirit, and spirit cannot be harmed." It was the ultimate act of spiritual defiance. Third, the pure transmission of gnosis and divine love. If the suffering was an illusion and the sacrifice a symbolic drama, what then was the purpose of Christ's coming? For the Docetics, the answer was clear, elegant, and beautiful. It was not about a transaction of salvation through death, but about a transmission of knowledge, gnosis, through life. Christ was a messenger, a divine conduit from the pleroma. His purpose was to awaken the trapped sparks of divinity within humanity by reminding them of their true origin and their true nature. Because he was not encumbered by a physical human body and a human brain, with its inherent fears, its ego, its survival instincts, and its cultural conditioning, his teachings were a direct, unfiltered, and pure stream. His phantom body was a perfect vessel for the divine word, precisely because it offered no biological or psychological resistance. This is where we find the concept of a truly mind-bending divine love. The love that the Docetic Christ spoke of was not a human emotion. It was not the flawed, conditional, and often possessive love born of attachment and fear. It was a cosmic force, the very essence and vibratory frequency of the true God. It was a love so pure, so powerful, so transcendent, that it could not be generated by a physical heart or processed by a human nervous system. It required a non-material form to be transmitted into our world in its absolute, uncorrupted purity. The Docetic Christ loved humanity, not with the limited compassion of a fellow sufferer, but with the illuminating, awakening power of a star. His love was gnosis itself, the knowledge that liberates. To receive this love was to awaken to one's own divine nature, to remember the spark of light within, and to realize that the door to the prison of matter had been unlocked all along. He came not to die for us, but to awaken us. He offered a key, not a ransom. His love was not a comfort within our suffering, but the light that shows us the way out of suffering altogether. It is no surprise that a teaching this radical would be seen as a profound threat. For the burgeoning Orthodox Church, which was building its structure on hierarchy, authority, ritual, and a specific literal interpretation of Christ's sacrifice, Docetism was poison. It undermined the very foundation of their power. If the body was not real, then the physical resurrection was merely the dissipation of an illusion. If there was no physical blood sacrifice, then the Church's central role as the indispensable intermediary for salvation through sacraments like the Eucharist, which depend on the real body and blood of Christ, became meaningless. Docetism empowered the individual. It taught that the path to the divine was not found in a church, a creed, or a priest, but within oneself, through direct gnosis. This was an idea too dangerous, too anarchic, to be allowed to flourish in a Roman Empire that was seeking a unified, controllable state religion. And so, it was systematically attacked by early church fathers like Irenaeus, Tertullian, and Hippolytus. It was condemned as a damnable heresy at great councils like the Council of Nicaea and the Council of Chalcedon, which hammered into doctrine the idea of Christ as fully human and fully divine. Its texts were ordered to be burned, its followers excommunicated and persecuted. The Gnostics were scattered, and their profound wisdom was driven deep underground, surviving only in whispers and fragments hidden from the flames of orthodoxy. For centuries, Docetism was known only through the distorted caricatures written by its enemies. It was a ghost story told by the church to frighten the faithful. But with the miraculous discovery of the Nag Hammadi library in 1945, the Gnostics could finally speak for themselves. Texts like the Gospel of Truth, the Gospel of Philip, and the Apocalypse of Peter revealed a vision of Christianity that was mystical, philosophical, and profoundly different from what became orthodoxy. But has the idea ever truly disappeared? The essence of Docetism, the belief that the spirit is the ultimate reality and matter, is a lesser, transient form, resonates through the ages. It echoes in the Hindu concept of Maya, the grand illusion of the cosmos. It is present in the Buddhist teaching of anatta, or no self, the doctrine that our sense of a solid, permanent self is an illusion. And in our modern age, it finds a strange and powerful new life in our digital realities. In the world of the Matrix, Neo is a perfect ascetic hero, a man who realizes his physical form within the simulation is an illusion, allowing him to transcend its laws. Every time we create a digital avatar to enter a virtual world, we are practicing a form of technological Docetism, projecting a phantom version of ourselves into another reality. I am curious about you here. Have you ever had a moment where reality felt thin, like a dream that was too real? A déjà vu that refused to fade, or a time in a virtual world where your avatar felt almost more you than your body did? If you feel comfortable, tell your story in the comments. This community is full of people who have watched the veil flicker, even for a heartbeat, and your story might help someone realize they were not imagining it. Docetism challenges us to look beyond the surface, to question the authority of our own senses in an age of deepfakes and virtual reality. It asks us to consider that perhaps the most real things in the universe, love, consciousness, wisdom, are entirely invisible and immaterial. It is a philosophy not of denial of life, but of transcendence over its limitations. It does not deny our human experience of pain and joy, but reframes it as a temporary lesson, a dream from which we are destined to awaken. In the end, the story of Docetism is not just a forgotten chapter of religious history. It is an eternal question posed to every soul traveler. What do you believe is real? The body that ages and fails, or the consciousness that witnesses it? The world of suffering and form, or the boundless, spiritual love that transcends all limitation? Perhaps the Phantom Messiah was the ultimate teaching, a reminder that our true form is not made of dust, but of starlight, and that the greatest love in the universe is the one that awakens us to this immortal truth. If this journey into the depths of forbidden knowledge has awakened something within you, share this video and subscribe to the channel. Let us know in the comments what you believe is the true nature of reality, for the path of Gnosis is a conversation that spans eternity. Together, we can continue to explore the greatest mysteries of existence. Thank you for watching. And if you feel called to walk with this archive beyond this one transmission, you can support this work in the simplest ways. Subscribe, tap the notification bell, and leave. That tiny act tells the algorithm that there is still a hunger in this world for depth, nuance, and questions that do not fit into neat, sanitized boxes. It helps this quiet corner of the internet stay alive, and it draws more soul travelers into this circle of remembrance.